What's going on, everyone? We are back with another Wire breakdown, this time for Season 1, Episode 2. We already broke down Episode 1, so if you haven't caught that yet, we got the links in the description. Go check it out. We're going to jump right into this breakdown as we usually do. We ended Episode 1 with the murder of William Gant, and that's where we pick up. So we open this episode with Bunk and McNulty at the morgue examining William Gant's body. Gant is 41 years old and took a single headshot at close range. He works as a maintenance man and doesn't have a wife or kids. Bunk is still in disbelief that this is connected to the Barksdales. Why kill a witness if the case was already beaten? McNulty knows that it's a way to send a powerful message.
Yep, and he's going to pick up where he left off last episode and embrace the daunting task of stacking a case against the Barksdale family. Bunk is still trying to cling to any safety within the status quo that he can. These two work together, but they don't actually have a ton in common as investigators at times. McNulty is bolder. Bunk is business as usual for the most part, unless he's motivated.
Okay, now let's jump over to the Barksdale unit as a whole and talk about what they do during this episode, as well as covering some of the Baltimore PD internal politics. So the newly established Barksdale unit gets their own office, and it's actually this extremely shitty basement in some government building. Maybe it's the basement of the actual PD. This place legitimately looks like a dungeon, probably has tons of asbestos and shitty chemicals everywhere. Construction is going on nearby, and the place has one landline telephone. This ragtag group is a mix of serious police and absolutely incompetent clowns. One of the guys, Prez Belusky, accidentally lets off his gun inside the office, which could have killed someone. Prez came from the casualty department, which is quite ironic. There's also the duo of Polk and Mahone, two drunk lazy bastards who were sent over from the property department. There's an older black cop named Lester Freeman who was sent over from the pawn shop unit.
I think you're onto something about this spot because it looks exactly like my middle school's basement, which did get closed for a time for asbestos removal. Prez is a fascinating character to me because he's what a lot of us would consider an incompetent cop, just not the normal type of bad cop, like Herc. He's accident prone and he folds under pressure in a way that defies logic. Like, I'm not a huge gun guy, but based on what little I do know about gun safety, firing that live round into a wall with others nearby is probably a cardinal sin. Casualty department is also a good get, so the fact that this guy is fresh off a desk/slower type of job probably drives Daniels wild since he actually needs hitters on this case.
It's an accident, okay? Give me a fucking break already.
He might still be a bigger asset than Polk and Mahone though. The only thing in danger of being solved between these two is the case of the missing pitcher and wings deal.
Yeah, I'd hate to be a can of beer around those two fuckers. So anyways, while the Barksdale unit is setting up, McNulty is running his own game per usual. He's got some history with Judge Phelan as mentioned before, nothing too crazy, but enough to where he can get Phelan's ear if he needs to. It's clear that Deputy Ops Burrell sent over idiots to the Barksdale task force, and McNulty knows that it's going to take some real police talent to work this case. He asked Phelan to put pressure on Burrell to send over better people, but don't say that it was from McNulty. Jimmy McNulty, baby, fuck the chain of command. Phelan suggests that they leak the dead witness story to the papers, which would put immense pressure on Burrell to solve the case, but getting the story in the newspapers would tip off Avon Barksdale that he's being investigated, so McNulty doesn't agree with that approach. He manages to convince Phelan to say something to Burrell and get better people. Lieutenant Daniels sees the lack of talent as well, so he goes to the Assistant State Attorney, Rhonda Perlman, for some help. Perlman has been looped in to help the Barksdale unit with any prosecutions. Her and Daniels have a good relationship, and while she wants to help, she can't risk the political backlash that would come if she sent her own people. This would make the higher-ups in Baltimore PD look bad and hurt their egos. She also knows about Prez. Apparently, Prez panicked and shot up an unmarked squad car before and falsely claimed that he was taking sniper fire. The only reason they didn't file charges against Prez is because he has some sort of connection in the Baltimore PD that kept him safe. Daniels does end up finding Lieutenant Cantrell, the one who was in charge of Prez, and begs for him to take Prez back. Here is where we get a glimpse of the incredibly childish but also complicated politics within the Baltimore PD. Cantrell knows that Prez is a goofy fuck, but Prez is apparently the son-in-law of a major in the Southeast District named Valchek. Cantrell's got a good chance at becoming major during the next round of promotions, so he can't do anything to piss off Valchek. Valchek also has a ton of connections amongst the Democrats, so he's got a bit of local political influence. Daniels levies with Cantrell and tells him, look, I'll keep Prez on, but you need to give me one of your best detectives, Sidnor, in return. Sidnor also happens to be black, which will allow him to better blend in while doing surveillance work in West Baltimore. I'm taking your worst, so give me your best. Cantrell isn't happy, but he agrees to the deal. Prez is that much of a liability that Cantrell is willing to lose his best man just to not have to deal with Prez.
Yeah, watching this through again, this is where you start to see the shortcomings of the system. Private or public sector, we've all met a guy like Prez before who just kind of seems to be failing upward. And even when you want to take him out, there's just one too many connections there to keep him on. Daniels tries to stay in the good graces of his bosses from a political standpoint, but at the end of the day, this guy is a no bullshit problem solver. It's not in him to take on a detail with this kind of potential and just lay down and take it. There's also the matter of the future major job opening up. He'll have competition from the likes of Cantrell, so taking down the Barksdale crew would be a feather in his cap. However, if he screws this up and makes the BPD look bad, then there's no shot of getting it. The line he walks gets tighter as this unfolds, and it continues for the rest of the season.
Daniels then gets called into a meeting in Deputy Burrell's office. Both Major Forrester of Narcotics and Rawls of Homicide are there as well. As a quick refresher, Daniels reports to Forrester. The men are discussing the murder of William Gant. After his conversation with Jimmy, Judge Phelan put pressure on Burrell to make headway in the Barksdale investigation. Burrell has managed to convince Phelan to not go public with the story of Gant's murder right now, but they're running out of time. They desperately need an arrest or two to get the judge off their asses. Daniels wonders, what if it's all true? What if Gant was murdered for being a witness? Rawls shoots that idea down quickly. Why would Barksdale want a witness murdered after they beat the case? Daniels says, maybe as payback, maybe to send a message. Burrell admits the truth. Even if it is all true, they can't afford to have this news get out. Baltimore is already poor as fuck, so they don't have any money for witness protection programs. If the public finds out that they lost a witness, it'll be, as Rawls puts it, a clusterfuck. Rawls says they should pull McNulty off the case, but it's not that simple, especially since Bunk is the one who caught the Gant murder, and he's McNulty's partner. Burrell is politically savvy and shoots that idea down. Pulling McNulty off this case would piss the judge off even more, and he definitely notified the press, so they can't do that. Their best bet is to let McNulty take his best shot at solving the case, and hopefully he comes up with nothing more than a few minor arrests. They cannot afford an intricate, drawn-out case.
Yeah, these guys are being absolute cheapskates with a budget. I think it's funny they'd sooner ignore a witness's murder than find a budget for any kind of witness protection as well. This all goes back to why Akeisha would not snitch on D last episode. There's a sense within the Baltimore community that the legal system isn't necessarily built to help them here. Once you've hit that point, you've messed up. Another infuriating aspect of this whole bureaucratic dance is that while the others play hot potato with their decision-making process, the Barksdales and other groups are running game without any meaningful resistance. The community continues to suffer as there's a cost for bullshitting around like this and betting on your own investigation to fail.
Now let's talk a bit about what other members of the Barksdale unit have been up to during this time. Kima is out running a small surveillance operation with Herc and Carver. The three of them are now on the rooftops near the Terrace towers, watching the Barksdale crew operate. Bubbles, Kima's crackhead informant, is helping them identify which guys are Barksdale members. Bubbles pretends to be selling clothes, and his charm allows him to keep the Barksdale soldiers engaged. He has each of them try on this red top hat. Anyone who Bubbles tries the hat on is a Barksdale member, and Kima snaps these photos for intel. Meanwhile, Bunk and McNulty pay a visit to the pit to talk to D'Angelo. Before they arrive, we see D giving some schooling to the young guys, Poot and Wallace, on how capitalism works, using chicken nuggets as an example. Wallace thinks that the inventor of the chicken nugget is probably super rich, and D laughs at that assertion. According to D, the bosses stay bosses, and the workers who come up with great ideas sit in the basement while the bosses get rich.
For anyone curious, Robert Baker was actually the guy who invented the chicken nugget. He was a revered Cornell man, so even though McDonald's didn't throw the cash his way, he didn't do half bad in the end. Still, a very worthy metaphor. And any criminal organization is those who do the grunt work that face the most risk and the least average reward. The nuggets also symbolize the lost youth among the kids working the pit. They're still just kids, man. If this hits you now, just wait till season 4. You're right about D though. He's trying to school them up, and the whole time he has this disillusioned, hollow look in his eyes because he knows that this life isn't all it's cracked up to be.
So Bunk and McNulty then pull up and interrupt the lesson. Now remember, Bunk technically isn't on the Barksdale detail, he's still just working for Homicide. They pull up and ask D about Gant's murder, and D claims that he doesn't know anything. This police activity draws the attention of the Barksdale soldiers as well as Stringer Bell. D knows that the officers don't have a charge on him, but when he tries to leave, Bunk frisks him and then they handcuff him and bring him into the station. All of this just to fuck with him. I'm not even fully sure if they were actually allowed to do that, if they had any probable cause. If you're watching this and have expertise, let us know in the comment section. Kima, who is already nearby, sees all this go down, and she calls Lieutenant Daniels to fill him in on what's going on. As Bunk and McNulty get ready to interrogate D, Daniels pulls up to Homicide and he's fucking pissed that McNulty picked up D'Angelo without notifying him first. Daniels had previously told McNulty to not do anything before looping him in first, and McNulty just ignored him. He gets McNulty alone and berates him for going to Judge Phelan behind his back. If McNulty had told Daniels about Gant's murder first, they could have approached Burrell first to get more resources for the case. Even McNulty's own major is threatening to disown him, so McNulty better tread carefully. McNulty tells Daniels it's all bullshit. Burrell gave their detail very shitty police, so he obviously wouldn't have given them extra resources if they went through the proper chain of command. McNulty is an asshole with a disregard for authority, but he truly wants the case to be solved. Daniels wants the same outcome. McNulty is skeptical and wants to see Daniels truly go all in on solving the case. He tells Daniels that the guy that they have in the interrogation room is D'Angelo Barksdale, nephew of Avon. When Daniels learns that D also recently beat the murder, he seems intrigued. McNulty admits that they don't have shit connecting D to Gant's murder, and they just brought him in to press him and see if he fucks up. Daniels almost seems impressed when he hears this. Detectives actually wanting to put in the work? Respect. Daniels tells McNulty he can do the interrogation, but Kima needs to be involved. At first, McNulty is annoyed and he tries to give Kima some grunt work, but when he finds out that she's actually done some research on the Barksdales already and was down in the projects today, he's taken aback and impressed.
These exchanges are important because McNulty and Bunk are gaining some common ground with people who also have good intentions that do good police work. Daniels in particular wants a solution similar to what McNulty aims for. He's just more reasonable about it. They're both two decent men battling a corrupt world, and Kima's just a boss.
So let's cover D's interrogation. Bunk and McNulty run a vintage two-man game on D. It's not a good cop, bad cop routine per se. It's just both of them stating pure facts and being relentlessly manipulative and rational. Their whole game is trying to get you to admit simple facts that are related to the case, then slowly steer you into admitting more and more things. You give an inch, they take a mile. Their chemistry is off the charts, and Kima looks on in the background and is very amused. They tell D that Gant was a good guy, a working man with 3 kids, and he worked 2 jobs. He was a maintenance man during the week and a cab driver on the weekends. He was also a volunteer at the church. Shit, D'Angelo already beat the case, so there was no point in killing Gant. Gant did not deserve to die. While this is going on, D's lawyer is on the way, but it's been 2 hours and Bunk and McNulty are taking advantage of the time they have to keep pressing D. D slips up by saying he's sorry for Gant, and that's all the opening these guys need. They say D is actually responsible for the murder, even if he didn't actually kill Gant. If D didn't kill Pooh Blanchard in that building lobby, then Gant would have never witnessed the murder, and Gant wouldn't have been killed for being a witness. It's a hilarious but correct connection that is drawn, and you can see this realization rattle D. McNulty wonders why they can't just sell drugs without all this murder. You can tell D feels terrible, and he starts agreeing that what happened to Gant was fucked up, even casually admitting that maybe his uncle Avon was involved and made a mistake and went too far. Bunk pulls out a picture of 3 young black kids and says that these are Gant's children and they'll now be fatherless. They suggest that D write a letter to these kids and tell them that he feels sorry for them. At this point, D is so overwhelmed with guilt that he starts on writing the letter. The photo of the 3 boys actually belongs to Bunk, and those are actually his sons. These 2 guys are so good at bullshitting that Kima actually believed them too. At this moment, D's lawyer, Maurice Levy, arrives and is annoyed. He stops D'Angelo from writing the letter and yanks him out of the interrogation room. Since they don't actually have any charges on D'Angelo, he's free to go. No real progress in the case, but McNulty and Bunk were able to ruffle some feathers and confirm their suspicions that Avon is involved in Gant's murder.
Yeah, Bunk and McNulty do show some real skill in the interrogation room, and they don't say anything groundbreaking, but they know how to hone in on a weak link. Levy sticks out to me here because this clearly ain't his first rodeo. He's got that white-collar, scumbag swagger to him, which is necessary when trying to scale an organization like this up. Think of him as Jimmy McGill if he was golf buddies with Jordan Belfort.
So after this interrogation is done, Daniels then calls together the Barksdale task force and gives orders. The unit has done a fairly good job of making the basement look halfway decent, but it's still grimy as hell with construction next door. This is when we see the entire Barksdale detail together, the combo of fuck-ups and good police. Detectives Kima Greggs and Jimmy McNulty will be the primary investigators and lead this crew. The team will split up into different groups to tackle the case. McNulty will team up with another homicide detective, an older Italian cop named Santangelo, and tackle the 9 to 10 unsolved murders from the previous year or so, many most likely caused by the Barksdale crew. Santangelo looks like he couldn't give a single fuck. Another group will work the street and target drug dealers, using them to try and get to the Barksdale bosses. That group is comprised of Kima, Sidnor, Herc, and Carver. Sidnor is the young talented cop that Cantrell gave Daniels. Mahone and Polk are basically assigned to do nothing except run down any specific leads that they are given. Daniels clearly wants them out of the way. Lastly, Prez and Freeman will start out doing office work, handling any paperwork duties that are needed. Rhonda Perlman will be their dedicated prosecutor. McNulty and Kima bring D'Angelo's letter to Daniels, but there's nothing there that can be used since D doesn't openly admit to doing anything and uses no names. McNulty begs Daniels to bring the letter to the higher-ups and get more resources, maybe a wiretap, some long-term surveillance. Daniels denies the request and says they need to get in and get out. Remember, he got marching orders from Deputy Ops Burrell to keep it simple, so he's simply following chain of command. Bubbles then arrives to the office to help Kima out and puts names to the Barksdale soldiers that they photographed. We got Little Man, who is an enforcer. We got Anton Artis, aka Stinkum. We got Roland Bryce, aka Weebay. McNulty arrives and gets introduced to Bubbles, and he immediately respects the quality of work that Bubbles has done. We learn that Kima usually pays Bubbles for informant work, but on this case, Bubbles is working for free to avenge the brutal beating of his friend Johnny from episode 1. Jimmy hands Bubbles a $20 bill anyways because he respects the quality of work.
Bubs being Kima's guy and the fact that some of that cash might be used to score a fix do play a role in her reaction. Nobody likes to get shown up like that either though. Putting names to faces is huge in a case that's going to require a lot of cold hard evidence. Bubs wouldn't be in the middle of this had the Hoppers and the Pit shown a little more mercy to his boy Johnny as it is. Kima tends to regard him with more humanity than others. Sometimes it does pay to be a good person.
Alright, so let's jump over to what the actual Barksdale gang is doing. Avon is hosting a community dinner, and we see D pull up with his girlfriend Donnette and their young son. This is the first time Donnette sees Avon, and you can tell that she's surprised at how young Avon is for being D's uncle and for running this successful drug crew. Avon pulls D aside to talk to him about what happened at the station and why the fuck he decided to write a letter to Gant's family. D tells Avon that the cops are starting to learn about their crew. They know the main names: Savino, Weebay, Peanut, Stringer, and Avon. Avon scolds D for even writing a letter and tells him not to worry about Gant's death. You can see the guilt eating D'Angelo up since Gant was killed for witnessing D'Angelo committing murder. Avon says that since Gant was willing to put D in jail, he deserved whatever was coming. And ultimately, D didn't make the call to murder Gant. That decision was made separately from D, so he needs to forget about it and move on. If he gets nabbed by the police again, don't say shit and definitely don't write a fucking letter. Here you see Avon letting a ton of questionable behavior by D slide just because he's his nephew.
Avon and String also take on a much different tone with D after he gets picked up and interrogated. We get the sense that they're trying to mend that relationship very quickly so that D holds up under pressure.
It ain't on you, cuz. You feel me? It ain't on you.
Stringer is not a fool, and Avon knows that D represents a layer of the organization that's closer to him than an average flunky would be. The idea of being a soldier, like Chen mentioned, comes up a bunch in this show. Only certain people have it in them to take orders, to stand tall, to remain ultimately loyal. You need so many of these players to run an organization like this, or else the whole thing just crumbles on you. It's like once this family has touched you, or even if you're born close enough to the action, you're wrapped into it by default.
Alright, so the episode ends with some major drama going on at the Terrace Towers. Herc, Carver, and Prez are all hanging out near the projects, keeping an eye out on things but also getting drunk and angry. Just such a bad trio of guys to have rolling together. Herc is the one gassing everyone up, complaining about how they're sitting here and doing nothing when they could be going into the projects and busting heads. Carver and Prez don't need much convincing, so the three fucking idiots end up going up to the towers and just pushing all the young Barksdale dealers around, roughing them up and shit. Actually, I'm pretty sure some of the guys they harass are completely innocent. Anyways, there's this one kid who was leaning on their cop car and being disrespectful, but Prez completely flips out and pistol whips the boy in the eye. The kid is fucked up bad, and the rest of the neighborhood witnesses this brutality. Bottles start getting thrown at them from the windows, and shots actually get fired at the car. The three of them have to duck for cover and call for backup, and Herc even gets hit by some stray debris.
Yeah, as an instigator, Herc is on like Cartman or Polly levels. Halfway through this scene, the lines become pretty blurry. Are these guys solving the case, or are they just being jackasses and committing various acts of police brutality? They want to feel a sense of control and power over the situation and that they can be helpful, but then this mentality is full of insecurity and becomes wholly unintelligent the way they execute it. It's the opposite of what McNulty is hoping to do with the case because there's no way you're getting any higher ups with this type of maneuver. It's the opposite of what Daniels is hoping to do because it's incredibly stupid and highly illegal. Honestly, I love The Wire for the reason that it was one of the first classic crime shows not afraid to show that law enforcement has its own share of shortcomings, at least the one that I remember. They portray when things go completely sideways and how that can be tied back to individual and institutional failures.
To make matters worse, Gant's murder ends up hitting the papers regardless. The gossip got too loud and the newspapers caught wind of it, but we know McNulty is going to get the blame even though he's not the one who actually leaked the story. We see Rawls freaking the fuck out and tossing all of McNulty's shit on the ground, except it's actually another detective named Crutchfield's desk.
In the midst of all this, we see that McNulty is sporting a classic divorced dad setup in the late 90s, early 2000s. Based on the floor, stacks of random shit instead of shelves anywhere, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a Nickelback CD lying around. Definitely a fridge that looks like this too.
Yeah, McNulty's place looks a lot like Russ Cole's place in True Detective Season 1. Anyways, McNulty pulls up to the Terrace Towers where Lieutenant Daniels is already on the scene looking at the aftermath of the fuckery caused by Herc, Carver, and Prez. McNulty finds Daniels and tells him that he had nothing to do with the Gant murder hitting the papers, but Daniels gives him a death stare and walks away. It's so funny how nobody believes McNulty. Daniels, meanwhile, has some other shit to take care of. We see that the squad car has been completely destroyed, and now Daniels has to figure out what the fuck happened. He questions Herc, Carver, and Prez on why the fuck they were at the towers at 2 a.m. They say because of police work. This is an absolute shit show. The boy who Prez pistol whipped is only 14 and he's in the hospital in critical condition. Witnesses saw what Prez did and the boy's mother is filing a police brutality charge, which for Herc would make 4 charges in the last 2 years. Jesus Christ. Internal investigations will be digging into this incident and these 3 could be in serious trouble. Daniels, regardless of how mad he is, still wants to protect his guys. He tells them to get their story straight. Prez admits to being the one who hit the kid, and Daniels tells him to memorize the following story. The boy picked up a bottle and was threatening the officers and made Prez fear for his safety. Prez approached the boy and ordered him to drop the bottle, but the boy raised it in a menacing manner, and Prez hit him with his nightstick, not his pistol. Damn, Daniels protects his people even when they are completely in the wrong. Meanwhile, McNulty confronts Judge Phelan about the newspaper story since there was a quote from Phelan about Gant's murder. Phelan claims that the reporter already had the details and that news of Gant's murder had already spread, so don't blame me. The episode ends with Daniels getting a call in the middle of the night notifying him that the boy has lost his eye. Oh my god.
The convo Daniels has with his wife about the game stood out to me throughout this part. From the season's opening scene, we know that everybody always has the right to play the game, whether it's a round of dice or a bureaucratic power struggle within a failing system. But the game doesn't come without risk and fallout. This episode to me was the moment where we could tell Daniels was all in, especially after that legendary rant to his dumbass crew.
What did you learn when you went into the Terrace at 2 in the morning to conduct field interviews?
There's an almost haunting cut to the burnt out police cruiser in the towers here as well. The towers are running with full efficiency, involving quite a few kids in the process. Add it to the list of moments where the loss of innocence is hinted at as it relates to what goes on at the pit and the towers. You've got a chunk of an entire generation that's risking a hell of a lot out there. The Barksdale machine is well organized, but not completely unfazed at the end of this round.
Well said, Damon. That does it for our Season 1, Episode 2 breakdown for The Wire. If there's anything that we missed, let us know in the comments. We'd love to have a discussion. We will be back with Episode 3. Catch you guys later.